All right, so now I'm going to go back to the state where we had just brought the images in by going to File, Revert, because that's the last time I saved it. And so what I'm going to do this time is leave the images up in the corner, and this is the only space that I'm going to adjust here. But I want some accuracy. So one way is I make sure I have the rulers out by going to View and Rulers, or just simply Command R. And then I can take the 0 point for the ruler. Right now you can see the 0 point is at this very corner. But if I want to change that to another point, and the point that I want is going to be right here. So I'm going to get us dialed in right to that point. I'm going to take the hand tool. Oh, actually, that's not going to work to move that. So I'll take the magnifying glass, and I'll get us really, really close to right there. And then we'll take that 0 point, and we'll drag it to right there. So now that's our 0. And then we can see in whatever unit we're in right now, I think that's pixels, what this distance is. So what I'm going to do here is I'll give us a predefined amount, which would be 350 pixels, right? So we'll go 350, put this guide here. Get some accuracy there. There we go. And then move that over. So we know there's 350 pixels between images. Okay, Command minus to zoom out here. And then I'm going to say, I like that amount, I don't like that amount. Actually, I don't like that amount. So I'm going to adjust it back to maybe like 325 or something, because I think that's just a little bit too much there. So I zoom in, get right over the top of that line, and let's just move it right to, I think 300 will probably be good. And if you can't move a guide, it's probably because it's locked, and you take care of that under View and Guides. And see, right now, if I were to select Lock Guides, then I would not be able to move that. And if it had a check mark on it, then I would select it again to get rid of the check mark so I could move it. Okay, so I'm going to move this image up here. And remember, 300 pixels is the distance. Command minus to back out. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to crop this as is right to the edge of the images. Okay, and then I hit return. I'm going to do Command semicolon to get rid of those guides. I'm going to do the F key test real quick. So I press the F key once, twice, just to see this against a black background to make sure I didn't accidentally grab any white that I did not want to have. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put 300 pixels all around so that it matches this space, which you'll see will get a much more accurate result than we had before. So the easiest way to do this is now what I talked about at the beginning of the last video, is the image canvas size. So we want to add 300 pixels to every single side. So what that means is that we have to add 600 pixels total to the width and 600 pixels total to the height. Now, we could do the math, or simply insert a 6 there and a 7 right there, but an even easier way to use this tool is when you know exactly what you need to add and you're not so concerned about what the actual outcome is, you just click relative, and that gives you a 0 starting point, and then you just put in what you're trying to add to the image. So 600 to the width, 600 to the height. I make sure that I keep this in the center point because I want to add equally to the right and to the left and the top and to the bottom. And then I click on OK. And I got a transparent background. Let me see if I could have done that differently. If not, there's a workaround. So image, canvas size, 300 and 300, or 600 and 600. Yeah, see, it looks like the canvas extension color is grayed out. Now that might be because of what layer I'm on. So let's see if that changes if I go over here. No. And it may be because it's a PSD file, but it doesn't matter. There's always a million ways, well, at least 3 or 4 ways it seems like to do everything in Photoshop. So we go back, we add our what we wanted here, and then we're just going to simply take the background and we're just going to paint that whole background white. And to make it real obvious what we're doing, I'm going to take the background and put it up on top. So it's now the very top thing on the image, and you can see there is our original background. And we're just going to simply make sure that we have default colors by clicking here, and then we're going to fill, we're going to make sure this layer is selected, and then we're going to do Command Delete. And what Command Delete does is it fills with the bottom color or the background color, and Option Delete, I'll do that right now, fills with the foreground color. So we want Command Delete. Then, now that we've got this whole thing filled in with white, we're just going to drag it to the bottom. And now we have some nice precision there. And now you would just save this out as whatever format you want. So if you're going to be editing it some more, you'd save it as a PSD file. That's never a bad thing to do. You know, I know it takes up a little more space and everything. But it's always a good idea to leave that pure, pristine PSD file with no JPEG compression until you're sure that you're done with the image. Now I want to talk about file size. Some of you may be listening to this part of the video because you have to make a file size for a contest. And a very typical thing you will see is upload your JPEG, PNG file, but make sure that the file size is no more than, and they'll give you a size. Well, and one of the contests that we do is 10 meg. So how do you know how big this file is before you upload it? Well, ironically, this is not accurate. So if you go to image, image size, you can see right there it tells us that our image is 81.5 meg. So we'd be like, wow, this image is way, way too big to send into the contest. Now, first of all, keep in mind that you can't send them a PSD file anyway, and just changing it to a JPEG will make it a lot smaller. But let's just go in and let's look at what size that file is right now, because this is what they're talking about, is what size is it on your computer, not what size does Photoshop say the image is. So I open up this folder, and you can see if you play around with these icons here, you get different views of the image, but I want this list view where it shows me the most information, and I can see that right now that test PSD is actually even bigger than what Photoshop told me. So let's go back into Photoshop, kind of keeping this in mind. Now, here's another thing that'll kind of help you. If we look at our two images that we had before we started, we can see that one was already 11.6 meg and the other was 4.7. So keeping them at their actual size, we're not going to get under 10 meg. And you can insert for 10 meg whatever size you need to be at. So what we would do is we'd go into Photoshop, and this is where it's good to have this backup image because we can just keep doing this over and over until we get close. So we know that we have to reduce this in size by probably 50% to get close. So we go to image, image size, and we can see that we've got a ton, right? At 72 pixels per inch, we have 106 inches wide by 51 inches high. So this time we are going to actually resample the image. But what we're going to do so that we're not continuously rewriting pixels is we're never going to save over the PSD document. So we just want to be a little bit careful about that. And if we're afraid that we might goof up, We could save yet another copy of this and always have that clean copy in the folder. But I'm just going to make sure that these two are locked. This is what it looks like when they're not locked. So I'm going to click that, make sure that these are branched together. And I'll change the width to say about half or even less than half of that. Let's just try it. Well, let's try 55. All right, we click OK. And we can see that right here, it's telling us, relatively what it's doing to the file size. But we notice that this was much bigger as a PSD, so we're assuming this would be 2. But for most contests, it's going to be a JPEG or a PNG file. So I'm just clicking OK there. And then I'm going to go File, Save As. And now I'm going to save it out as my JPEG. So I'm going to change my format to JPEG. And I want to do as little compressing as possible. A lot of times on these contests, they don't tell you how wide and how tall to make the image. They just say how big it can be. So I'd rather have a super high quality smaller image than a not so high quality large image. So when I select JPEG and click Save, it's going to ask me what quality I want. And I'm going to make sure my quality reading is all the way to maximum. None for matte, baseline standard for the format. We click OK. We now have the PSD file is still what's showing up in the program. So we'll go into that folder again and look at the image. So interesting, it's only 6.7 meg. So that's how powerful JPEG compression is. And since we didn't give it a lot, we still probably have a really decent looking image here. But pixel count is your friend. So let's go back to Photoshop. Let's go back to this PSD. Let's go File, Revert, so that we're back to the full-size image. I'm going to click on another tool to get rid of that crop from showing up. And then we'll go back into Image, Image Size. And so when I had it at 55 inches here, that brought me down to 3960 pixels, and I know that I was still well within under the 10. So let me try changing this to 80. So this is how you experiment, and you can see that you can't pay attention to this, but you can kind of look at the pixels dimensions and get an idea. Now that's a pretty super high quality image. So we'll click OK. Once again, we'll save it out as a JPEG. Maximum quality, and go look in the folder. You can see I went just a little too much. So 80 inches, too much. Probably go back, do 70. It'll be perfect. But I want you, and that's exactly what you would do, but no sense me showing you that again. That would be pretty redundant. So, but I do want you to see something. So keep in mind that this was 11.8 meg. I'm going to open up the actual JPEG now and Photoshop, and I'm going to go to Image, Image Size. And see, so you just cannot rely on that. The image size and the file size are two different things. I believe it has to do with the channels that are available in Photoshop, for you to work on individually, and that the JPEG just, when it's actually saved, sums the file up, and so it's an apples to oranges comparison. So I just don't want you to make that mistake. And here's all the stuff I covered, and I'll basically take from here and make a table of contents in front of those two videos.